and gentlemen, it is now time.
The best there is, best there was, and the best there ever will be. And you know it.
With a tear in my eye.
The cream of the crop. Acknowledge me.
What's up, everybody? Episode 346 of Top Rope Nation. Ryan Drosty, not by myself today. Here we are. It's Justin Joint. It's Jesse Velasquez here to talk about an abundance of topics as we get going with this week's flagship of Top Rope Nation. And Justin Joint, you're all decked out in the Celtics gear, celebrating championship number 18. How you doing, sir?
I am fan-fucking-tastic.
I can't blame you.
It has been 16 years since the Celtics last won. In fact, I think that is any of my team's first champion. Well, no, I guess the Yankees won in 2009. So it's been 15 years since any of my teams have won anything. So I'm feeling fantastic.
I mean, you've seen the Niners make the Super Bowl a couple of times, which is nothing to write. I mean, it's not bad.
3 Super Bowl losses. Yeah.
At least you got the NFC title rings, right?
I guess.
I know a little bit about that.
Nothing like a participation award.
I said to you when the Celtics won, I'm pretty sure it's only the second time in the history of Top Rope Nation that one of our hosts' teams have won a title. Very first year, Cubs won the World Series. I mean, just a few months into the run, and nothing has happened since then for any of our teams. So, congrats, sir.
Yeah, I think that's right.
What are you celebrating with in the glass? What's in the glass tonight?
I cracked open one of my flashy blouses.
Nice, very nice. Is that dimensional?
Boy, I don't know who this is. Brewed and dimensional.
Dubuque, Iowa. Nice.
It's good. Look at this color, dude. Which I guess the camera doesn't really show. It's a much brighter orange than what my camera is showing there. It's pretty.
Nice and hazy. Just like
yeah.
Jesse, how you doing, sir? How's it going tonight?
So let's talk about if you're a 32-year-old in Boston right now, you've had 13 championships since you've been alive. That's counting your entire city. So that's Patriots, Celtics, Red Sox. I think the Bruins won one as well sometime in the teens. And then there's the 32-year-old in Minnesota who hasn't seen a championship at all, unless you count the WNBA.
I mean, the Lynx had quite the team. You got to count that.
They have a decent team this year, too.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm curious. Who do you guys think championships belong to? The city or the franchise? Because I bring that up because the Celtics just won number 18, which puts them one ahead of the Lakers. But I think like 4 or 5 of those Lakers trophies were from when they were in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I just find that a little weird to count those ones. Like, I don't believe OKC counts the one Supersonics championship.
Doesn't it kind of vary franchise to franchise?
It does.
How they do that.
Yeah.
I think the franchise personally, I mean, look at our friend Frank out in New York. You know, the Giants don't even play in New York, but of course New York City would count those as theirs. So
True.
I would say the franchise personally.
Okay.
Jesse?
I would agree with you. It is definitely the franchise. And yes, by the way, Lakers, why wouldn't you change the name when you moved to Los Angeles?
Yeah, that's a little odd.
Just like Utah Jazz, Ryan Huffman. One of the most nonsensical names in all of sports. Don't get much wider than Utah. I mean, maybe Iowa. Utah's probably wider than Iowa, actually. I don't know for sure.
Grizzlies. I don't believe there's a lot of Grizzlies down in Memphis.
Grizzlies in Memphis, jazz music in Utah. Yeah, some weird names in the sporting world. I did see that. I think it was going around on Twitter X or something about Minnesota and the sports teams. I did run across that. I didn't send it to you because I didn't want to make you feel bad, Jesse. But I think they should be counting the Lynx in that. Come on.
Like I said, they got a shot at it here this year. I think they're the second or third best record in the WNBA.
Yeah. What do you got in the glass tonight?
a new release from Steel Toe Brewing, which I didn't know until I walked in this evening. It is called Carbide IPA. It's a hazy.
Sorry. Did you go to the brewery to pick it up?
I did, yes. So I
Okay.
got off of the shoot job this evening, walked about 150 feet. I'm like, let's just go get a solo brew, see what's there. I said, there's the normals, and I'd never seen this before. So I'll let you know how it tastes. It was released on June 7th. First time as far as I know.
Nice. Very nice. Well, I've got I went classic. I haven't had a gin and tonic here in a while, so I went with the gin and tonics. But I think I've been all beer lately, so a little gin and tonic.
Celebrating a little Josh Giddey acquisition.
I mean, certainly the Bulls don't need any shooting, do they? They get a guy shooting guards in the league. My God, this team. I texted a couple friends. I said, look, I have been a loyal Chicago Bulls fan since the late 1980s. I don't know if I can do this anymore. I might just go full on T-Wolves at this point. They're closer to me. They're 3 hours away. I might have to abandon the Chicago Bulls. This is just getting ridiculous. This entire front office has got to go. I don't know what they're doing.
Might have to throw a Kendrick Lamar joke in here right now, because apparently with the Caruso acquisition, OKC got an A+ for this trade, and then with the Chicago Bulls acquiring Josh Giddey, they got an A-.
I also saw the joke, not to make light of a serious situation, but I saw the joke. Man. Josh Giddey, not the kind of getting younger the Chicago Bulls should be doing. Oh, jeez. I don't know. What a disgrace.
He'll get toughened up in that city.
Franchise. Disgrace this once proud franchise is. Yes.
I mean, anytime you can acquire a player that could barely get on the court for his own team in the playoffs, you got to do it. You got to do it.
Get benched in the playoffs because you can't shoot? Yeah, let's give me that guy. And let's get no draft picks back. This team that is stocked full of draft picks, OKC, don't get a single draft pick, giving them a 2-time All-NBA defensive player. Come on.
The dullest of silver linings is at least you would assume this is step one in the teardown, and that Levine will be the next to go.
And they'll probably get nothing for him. So I could bitch about that next week.
They'll go get Miles Bridges or something.
Another funny story, when Chet Holmgren came back here, OKC T-Wolves game, he went back to Minnehaha Academy. I think that his jersey retired, and the only person from the team that didn't show up was Josh Giddey.
Oh, interesting.
Duh. I think it was like 2 weeks after all the allegations came up in the Snapchat stuff.
Yeah. Real sad stuff. Real sad. Guys, if you never listened to Top Rope Nation before, we do talk a little pro wrestling here and there. We'll get to it, but we like to touch base about what's going on in our lives before we dive into the world of wrestling. And boy, do we have some topics tonight. But before we get there, please help us out. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube. That would help us a lot. If you're watching on YouTube right now, please hit that like button. Hit us up in the chat room. We'll get your comments featured. If you really like the show, hit us with a super chat. We would appreciate that as well. If you're listening on the podcast feed, of course, leave us a 5-star rating. A written review is even better. And subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can find out all the info about the show at topropenation.com. And we have a Patreon page where we put out all kinds of bonus content. We just dropped a new episode of Top Rope Nation Classics very, very recently. And soon we will be recording another one on Vengeance 2005, which should be a lot of fun. That just won our vote over on Patreon. You see the names of our patrons scrolling across the bottom of the screen right now. And we thank each and every one of them for their support in making this show possible. Guys, we got a lot to talk about. I guess we'll start WWE because this is the biggest topic everyone's talking about this week. This is the thumbnail here on the broadcast on YouTube. So let's get right to it. The very closing segment of Monday Night Raw. Finally, Uncle Howdy and his group was revealed. I could hear Justin Joint screeching with anticipation and then excitement from all the way across town. Uncle Howdy, the entire Wyatt Sicks group, was revealed. The crowd lost their minds. Social media lost their minds. And my question for you, I'm going to throw it to Jesse first. Is the Wyatt Sicks with Bo Dallas and his clan, is this destined for greatness, Jesse? Or is this destined to underwhelm and fail long term? What do you think?
It's definitely destined to underwhelm. I don't necessarily know if it's destined to fail, and that's because of the World Wrestling Entertainment audience, the ones who soak up this content on an every week basis. For us, we know that the bell has to ring eventually, and all 6 of them or all 5 of them combined probably have the ability of, we'll go with Tito Santana. That actually might not even, no, that's almost too good.
That's
Probably,
generous.
That's
who would that be?
I just said that's very generous.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree. Maybe
Even combining like 5 people together,
Yeah.
I think is still.
all 5 people's ability would combine. We'll go with the Brooklyn Brawler. How's that sound?
Still might be generous, but closer.
According to the WWE audience, the only one that has hope is Joe Gacy, and I think the only reason I would even think that is like, well, okay, is he going to show me some McFoley like chops? Because that's all I've been hearing about is the guy has some pretty good charisma, but if you don't have any wrestling ability, what does it matter to me? That 5-minute presentation was sweet looking. Obviously, I'll use the word cinema because it cinematic wise, it looked good. I thought everything was shot well, but for that to win an Oscar along those lines, no, we're definitely not going there. And there was another couple of puzzling things that I took away from this, with Chad Gable lowering his record to 2-11 and now being shot out of the Money in the Bank picture. Ilya Dragunov has now taken his place in that triple threat match next week to acquire a Money in the Bank opportunity in Toronto, Canada. And then how does he reemerge on television? It looked to me like there was, from a Rage Against the Machine song, a bullet in his head.
Yeah, that is exactly what it looked like. It was, man, who are these people? This is cinema. What the fuck? Who says this? I mean, you guys were sending me these tweets.
People who don't watch movies, who only
this is
watch
not
Monday
cinema.
Night Raw and SmackDown. That's it. Those are those people claiming this to be cinema.
It was cool for the wrestling business, for sure. This is not cinema. This came out of Hollywood. It would be laughed at forever. Are you kidding me? Like, come on. I mean, you're grading this on a curve, to be sure. Yeah, the members of the group, in case you don't know, just for your information. So you got Bo Dallas, of course, Uncle Howdy, younger brother of the late Bray Wyatt. You've got Eric Rowan back from the original Wyatt family. He is playing Ramblin' Rabbit from the Wyatt Funhouse here. Dexter Loomis is the Buzzard, Mercy the Buzzard. You got Nikki Cross out there, who apparently is Sister Abigail. And Joe Gacy, as Jesse mentioned, Huskus, the pig boy. There they are. Justin, your thoughts?
Well, first and foremost, Ryan, I noticed on the post you put on Facebook to let everybody know we were doing this show. You're not applying the correct name, and if McCandless taught me anything, it's called everything by its proper name. This is the Wyatt Sicks, as in Sicks. That is embarrassing.
I got both spellings.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I missed it. Sorry, buddy. I just saw the number.
Let me clear my name a second here because we got high standards. I put both of them in the first sentence of the video description on YouTube to capitalize on the SEO, but I did use the number in the title because it was easier and took up less characters. Yeah, I don't know about that SICKS spelling of six.
That and Tony Khan calling his favorite marks sickos.
And then the t-shirt. They got to get some quality control over these t-shirts, AEW.
Oh, it's getting bad now.
Yeah. Got to get some quality control. Sorry, Justin.
I mean, you guys kind of summed up my thoughts. The production was done well. The camera shots were done well. Although I did find it funny that Bo tripped right out of the gate, which was kind of funny. But then the biggest point that Jesse made is at some point they're going to have to wrestle. At some point, they're going to have to take off the stupid masks. And honestly, outside of Nikki Cross, who I think is good in the ring, she's just always been saddled by horrendous gimmicks. I don't know if any of these people can go. And frankly, this spooky shit never works. It worked with The Undertaker, but I think that's because they used it sparingly, and it took them, I think, 2 to 3 years before they really started leaning into it. And by the time they really got into it during the Attitude Era, the product was just so hot that they couldn't do anything wrong. And obviously this is in honor of Bray Windham, who I think we can all agree the best Bray was before they started leaning into the spooky stuff. Because, they had the match, and everybody go back, watch WrestleMania 30 with John Cena. That crowd is so freaking hot for Bray. It's incredible. And then I believe the next pay-per-view is when they did the silly thing with the lights go out and there's a kid in the middle of the ring. I think it was during a steel cage match or something like that. And, it just got worse and worse from there. But the best Bray Wyatt was the unspooky kind. It was just when he was like the cult leader. But, having said all that, I know this isn't for me. This is directed at everybody who will just eat it all up, and they're going to love it. And they're probably not going to care how they're utilized in the ring and against, all the other superstars. So I don't think it really matters all that much what we think of it. My only hope is that they come up with a competing faction of a group of underdogs and extremely annoying heels. In you would call them the Waltman Six, SYXX. That's my only hope. I just want that to happen. And frankly, talking about this debut on this show, I don't even know if it was as dumb as somebody quitting, the promotion just after recently very publicly signing a new contract that included The Rock and a giant sword. So, there you go.
Yeah, like if you miss that in today's day and age, I mean, that was pumped out on social by The Rock, one of the most followed human beings in the world. I mean, I don't know how you could miss it. So, yeah, the idea that he quit, I think it was Fightful in their report about what was going on with Drew. They're like, just in case anyone is wondering, this is a storyline. It's like, you would be the dumbest person on earth to think this wasn't a storyline. I mean, I also heard that, with this Wyatt Sicks stuff, that it's not going to lean into the supernatural. And it's not going to be a supernatural group. And my first question was, then what the hell did I just watch on Monday?
Yeah.
Where they had smoke everywhere. Is that natural? Did they just have smoke all over the backstage area? What do you mean there's not going to be They already did it.
Is this just another version of what was that? Retribution? Was that the group they came up with in 2020?
Yeah. I mean, I sincerely hope it works out for the people involved, because I know they want to do it for the right reasons, and they're trying to pay tribute to their late friend who, on this show, very up and down on Bray Wyatt's career throughout the years. As you all know, if you've been listening to us for a while, we thought The Fiend was dreadful. We liked it when it first started, though.
Mm-hmm.
Same.
We raved about it when it first started on the show. And then it gradually got bad. And then it got embarrassingly bad, in our opinion. But it was super cool at the beginning. But we always had the question, how are they going to sustain this long term? And I would have the same question about this group. Like how do you get people interested once they actually have to work matches? And that's when it becomes very, very difficult. But the debut, no question about it, is not for me. I'm not into this kind of stuff really, but it was cool for the people who like this kind of stuff. And I don't deny that. I think they executed it, other than the trip Justin mentioned or the stumble, pretty dang well. And I mean, they couldn't have done it any better really with what they're going for. And I hope it does work out for them. But if I was a betting man on this, I would say, long term, I don't know. I would not bet in favor of it. I think it's going to be very, very difficult.
And the other thing is, going back to Bray, was, I think he was average to below average in the ring. He could have a good match, with the right opponent. His promos could tend to ramble and be non-coherent. But it was undeniable that he had just a natural charisma that you were just drawn to. And none of these people in this group have that. We have seen enough of them on television to know they do not have that. And unfortunately, that really goes for who we assume to be the leader of this group, Uncle Howdy, Bo Dallas. Like, I don't know how he's going to pull this off. I've heard rumors that, it is the Wyatt Sicks. So perhaps this is all gearing towards an Alexa Bliss return, and maybe she's going to be the big leader, which would make sense with her ties to Bray. But I don't think that's going to make this any better. So, yeah, it's not for me. I don't really care all that much, but I am morbidly curious to see how this plays out.
Very well said. I don't have a whole lot to add. Yeah, I think you put it perfectly there. I think you do have a group that's largely consistent of people who serve better in the sidekick role without the natural leader, which is going to make it really, really difficult. Yeah, Bray oozed charisma. It jumped off of the screen. Like Justin said, the early Wyatt family, when it was just him and Harper and Rowan, was by far the best iteration because it was the most believable. You could totally buy into this cult group out in the swamps, like this is real life. I could see this being a real thing versus the supernatural stuff. I think it worked for Taker. We've said this on the show many times because Taker came from the era of cartooniness.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's not like that anymore. And if you think of all of the different, again, I'm going to say supernatural because I don't really believe they're not going to have any supernatural elements. I just don't, because we saw it in the debut and none of those characters have really worked. I mean, I was talking with our friend Derek Chappelle about this the other day on text, and we were trying to come up with ideas of in the last 25 years or less, when has there been a character with supernatural tendencies that worked long term? And you think about stuff like the Boogeyman, which just
Papa Shango.
Papa Shango worked very briefly, and then they banned it, and it became a silly thing. I don't know if I may be generous saying it worked, but for a little bit, it was interesting, at least. I mean, I was a kid, but with House of Black, when they got too much into that shit, Kyle ranted about this on the podcast a while ago. It wasn't working because they were getting too much into the lore, he said. And then when they got back to them just being ass kickers, then it worked again. So it hasn't really worked for anyone long term other than Taker, because he was of that era and people grew up watching the character. So I think it's a huge challenge, and if they make it work, it'll be a massive testament to the people portraying the characters and also the creative, because I think, once they gotta work, I mean, this is gonna be, and what I mean in the ring, when they gotta work in the ring, it's gonna be really, really difficult.
And
go ahead.
All I want to add to that is that, and if they're not supernatural, then I just think they look all the more silly for how they dress and present themselves.
True.
It worked for a handful of months with Broken Matt Hardy and TNA. I mean, that's probably that's the rare exception, I'd say, in the last 2 decades. Go ahead.
That had an inherent silliness to it. Whereas, everything with Bray in this group so far is they want to be taken seriously. Broken Matt Hardy was just fun from the start until it got super old. But I get your point.
Which is actually to my next point that you just touched on. Are you gonna take the Wyatt Sicks seriously in a feud with the Judgment Day? Are you gonna take them serious in a feud with Sami Zayn or something along those lines? Or I mean, can we? I don't buy it just because I know a lot about their past and who they were.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we shall see. Let's move on to something else that happened on Raw right at the very beginning. Seth Rollins, fellow Iowan, Justin, made his return.
Oh, sorry. Was that out loud?
I thought he was just promoted by the Milwaukee Brewers. I think there was a Tyler Black that was promoted by the Milwaukee Brewers here a couple days ago.
So Rollins is back and immediately put himself in the title picture. He's going to be wrestling Damian Priest at Money in the Bank here in just a couple of weeks. We talked, and I talked about this on the solo show I did the other day, coming out of Clash of the Castle and the direction for the world title with a Priest Gunther match, heel versus heel now, staring at you down the barrel at SummerSlam, and how that doesn't really work booking wise. Them once again not strapping up Drew McIntyre, now doing this he quits angle with him. Is Seth Rollins going to win the title just to lose it to Gunther a month, not even a month later? Or like, where are they going with this? What do you guys think? What do you think, Jesse? Go to you first.
It's a pretty odd scenario that they're going to throw themselves in because, like you just said, I mean, Rollins is easily credible to take this championship off of Priest at Money in the Bank, and you get your standard face versus heel dynamic at SummerSlam, and Gunther enters the picture, or at least we think, unless he decides they somehow shoehorn him into SmackDown against Cody. But that's another topic for another day. It's just another weird thing is, yes, he becomes 2-time champ, and then only for it to go to Gunther, presumably down the road. Because as I've been watching recently, and we'll touch on this later, is when it comes to the chase, the money is in the chase when it comes to the face. I actually had a half laugh at that a couple nights ago with watching not Dark Side of the Ring, but Who Killed WCW. So, yeah, Seth's like immediately coming back, and I guess rightfully so that maybe he does jump the line because he did lose the championship. He should get his rematch. He's healthy now, which is also amazing that 2.5 months after his knee injury, he's healthy and ready to go again. So there's obviously some rehab going on and maybe some other hijinks we shall see. But I honestly think it's really good to see him in the ring. And I think I would much prefer to see the transitional champ the month and then transferred over to Gunther here at SummerSlam.
A Gunther versus Seth Rollins matchup is infinitely more intriguing for SummerSlam than a Gunther versus Damian Priest. Because, I mean, if it stays Gunther and Damian Priest, that match is going to be outshined by, 4 to 5 other matches on that card by the time it all comes together. But having said that, I also think it's pretty weird that if you're going to have a short-term transitional champion, because I think the one thing we would all agree on is that Gunther's winning the championship at SummerSlam. We would assume.
I hope, but depending on how this plays out, I'm not sure. I'm really not.
So I just want to add real quick. So what I was going to say is that I find it very weird if they're going to do a transitional champion. I'm assuming Gunther's winning. Is to go with Seth instead of Drew in front of his, home country. I find that to be a very weird scenario. Now, obviously, they want to get to Drew and Punk. But I mean, it's kind of a good problem that they have, unless they go with Damian Priest and Gunther. So I don't know, man.
They got 2 major programs because they got Drew and Punk, but then they also got Punk and Rollins, which they were going to do originally. And they still got to get to that too, as long as Punk can stay healthy. I mean, those are 2 huge matches now that they're waiting around to get to. And I mean, all the reporting indicates that Punk is going to work SummerSlam, but that's the plan, that they're fairly certain he's going to be healthy enough to work the match there. So you would assume that's going to be McIntyre. I mean, there's some things in flux because right after that, you going to move him to the Rollins feud, so we'll see. I mean, it's pretty, I'm not going to lie. It's pretty interesting. And I said this on the review of Clash too. Like, I don't want to come off like a hater of Damian Priest. I really like Damian Priest a lot. If you guys didn't watch the match, I mean, he was super impressive in that match. And I mean, all you got to do is go back. God, I can't believe it's been this long. Go back 6.5 years when Justin and I watched him work at the ROH pay-per-view in New Orleans in 18. If you listen to our post-WrestleMania podcast, we raved about Punishment Martinez and how much we liked him. It's just that the timing is just not right for him to be world champion right now. It just doesn't feel right. That doesn't mean he's not capable of being world champion. It just means like the timing is way off right now. And when you got all this other stuff happening around the title scene with all those names we just mentioned, it's really, really hard to make the argument that he should be the world champion right now. He's just, I think he should have the opportunity in the future. I think they got to move it. They got to get something else right now. And I would bet on him being world champion again. I mean, he came out in the press scrum, and you can tell like he takes the stuff to heart. Like no one thinks I deserve to be world champion and stuff. And like I want to be very clear, I do think he deserves to be it at some point. It's just the timing right now. They got so much stuff happening with Punk and McIntyre and Gunther waiting there and Rollins coming back and Rollins Punk. And God knows they got to capitalize on these Punk matches while he can hold up. So, you would think they'd want to factor in a title in one of those big Punk matches eventually. So it is interesting. I'll give WWE credit. There's a lot of things happening there right now that I find interesting and makes me want to tune into the product. So I'll give them credit. We'll see how this card plays out in the next couple of weeks because we'll have some answers then.
There are a lot of PLEs, by the way, this back-to-back stuff. My gosh, Backlash. Then 3 or 4 weeks later, you have the Saudi Arabian event. 2.5 weeks later, Clash at the Castle. Now, 2 more weeks down the road, Money in the Bank. Then you get your spacing back with SummerSlam a month. But then Berlin, I believe, is at the very end of August too. So that's another 4 weeks. That's just a lot of PLEs kind of thrown down our throats. So, and Damian, I believe, has he been on all of them? He defended against Jey Uso in one of them, defended against McIntyre on the other. He might not have wrestled at which one? Backlash or the Saudi Arabian event?
Yeah, I can't even remember.
Yeah.
I mean, he's pretty much has been, though, for the most
now
part.
He's going to be on this one.
Yeah.
If he miraculously makes it out of this one, I think he'll be on SummerSlam's card too.
Yeah. So, well, that's what's going on in WWE right now, you guys. No shortage of things to talk about. Should we throw it over to AEW? I mean,
yes.
All right. Let's start with the Swerve and Ospreay promo. We got that really early in the show last night. Make you more excited for the match? Any critiques? Did you really like it? Jesse, I mean, you've been studying Will Ospreay for a while here, so I'll go to you. What did you make of the face-to-face with Swerve?
What I'm really liking about Swerve Strickland right now is that he is not taking this seriously, but his character seems to make things personal. And when it becomes personal, that's when he becomes more of a lethal weapon. He proved it. That's how this whole thing started with Hangman Page. Mm-hmm. So you get that involvement as well. And now he just goes and declares last night that I'm ready to make this personal with you. Mentions his fiance and her son. And that's the first time that we've seen that kind of fire out of Will Ospreay. We have definitely seen this fire before. And obviously during the promo, of course, I think the big one was the hit row line. While you were over the last 2, 3, 4 years in hit row, I was out with a hit list and knocking everybody off of them. And you're just going to be the next one down the line. So it's been fun stuff. Very fun stuff. And what was hilarious to me real quick is I was at my shoot job and Uptown Funk came on. First thing I immediately thought of was Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland.
Nice. Justin?
I liked the face-to-face. I thought that was really good. And they even kind of covered a little bit for my one nitpick. And that's Swerve talking about how, Ospreay is still affiliating himself with the Callis family and he's got friends and whatnot. Well, he doesn't have any friends. He gave up all his friends so he could be a world champ. But then, Ospreay showed up again later on in the show and just every time he's showing up, he just feels like so much bigger of a deal than Swerve does right now. Which I hate to say because I want Swerve to have an awesome world title run, but I just think he's getting overshadowed with their way. I don't even know if it's the way they're booking it. I think Ospreay is just naturally connecting with the crowd in a different way than Swerve is, because there's no denying that Swerve is connecting. You just listen to the house calls, and that the people are into him. But when you have, a face-off with Ospreay and MJF, I'm into it, but I can't help but feel like that's just cutting Swerve out at the knee. You guys feel that way at all?
Yeah. I've been wondering if they got to turn Swerve and make him heel, just because Ospreay's rise is so undeniable right now. And if you want him to feel like a top dude, you have to turn him. And he kind of like hinted at that with making it personal and mentioning his kid and everything. And calling back to the Hangman feud, I felt like, with that. So I definitely feel that way. And it sucks because it feels like they got these two ascendant stars at the same time, which is, I mean, frankly, a good problem to have. But I feel that too. Ospreay's getting the biggest reactions. He just is. So like, if you want to flip the script, then do you got to make Swerve a heel again? I mean, what do you think, Jesse?
Oh, with AEW and their blurred lines with heels and faces. So let's suppose this match is over. Then what? I mean, Swerve has already shown by the crowd reactions he's getting outside of this feud that he's probably the number 2 babyface in the promotion.
Yeah, I mean, now they got MJF back, and he's still acting like a face. So
better suited as a heel. So I'm assuming he's going to be the one that's going to turn at some point in time, especially with the whole just the Undisputed Kingdom stuff in the complete review mirror. Yeah. So yeah, you can keep them both face, keep them away from each other for a few months after this. And you're going to have a nice problem here down the road. You can just kind of bait and switch with not just those two, but MJF and Hangman Page too.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I'm holding on to with, the possibility of just them kind of being forced to Swerve, to make Swerve a heel again, is I think they could just kind of copy Scott Hall a little bit. You can keep the house call, and it just mimics, Scott Hall getting on the mic with the "Hey yo," that's his one crowd interaction line, and outside of that, he's a heel. And I think Swerve might just be better as a heel too. Even though, that's the other weird thing, is it does kind of feel like he's slowly getting over as a babyface champ too. So it's just this weird crossroads of, these, skyrocketing, baby faces just meeting at the same time.
When we talked about this match, which I think, we kind of went back and forth on, was this the right timing? It was sooner than we expected. We thought it was going to happen at All In. And then we kind of talked about how we could see this match going either way. I think we were leaning towards Swerve retaining, though. I'm definitely leaning towards Swerve retaining now, just how they've called into question the Callis family and everything. I mean, it feels like they're going to cost Ospreay the match. And then maybe he's going to be the wild card in the Owen tournament, and that's how he's going to get back into the title picture, and he'll be away from Callis. I could see that happening. I'm like fairly confident. I said this a couple weeks ago on the pod. I could see him going to Ospreay. He's so hot right now. Doing Ospreay and Danielson would be sweet, and all in. And that certainly could happen. But right now, just the way it's played out on TV ever since then, it's made me think that Swerve is going to retain. I think the way they have built this match has been phenomenal. We haven't even talked about this, but Justin and I were at Dynamite last week, which was a really fun show. Top Rope Nation sign all over, by the way. I want to thank Tim, who's watching, and he's in the chat right now. There's a Top Rope Nation sign all over. Tim, if you can send me that screenshot to my email, I'll put it up on the show because I don't have it saved on the computer I'm using right now. I was going to show it on the show. But man, we got a lot of airtime. And there was a lot of Top Rope Nation listeners at that show in Des Moines. It was a lot of fun. But that closing segment, talk to someone who works for AEW after the show. And he told me, you got to go back and watch it because they're being live. We didn't know what they said to each other. We just saw they were talking in the ring, but it was off mic. And this person who works there told me that was very intentional. They wanted it to be all off mic the way that happened. So I immediately, like the next morning, went back and watched it. And, Swerve made the line about, you're lucky that it's you who took my belt because anyone else would be in the ground right now. I thought that was good stuff. And they wanted it off mic on purpose to make it seem more personal. That was great. That was a great segment. the face-to-face this week. I am really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the show in general, which, we talked about Forbidden Door and it kind of missing that New Japan Pro Wrestling, actually feeling like the Forbidden Door, because most of the people that were big names have come over now. I mean, the build for the show has been really good. I am really, really looking forward to it. It's only a week and a half away now, so I got to give them credit. I think the build's been great. I know the ratings and sometimes the attendance is not reflecting that for AEW right now. But look, this is a long game. We talk about WWF's rise all the time, and I'm not saying they're going to become the Attitude Era WWF, but like, we just reviewed a Raw from 97 on Classics a couple weeks ago. The May 26, 97 Raw's War, one of the best episodes of Raw to that point. And we talked about on the show, and if you're a patron, you can listen to it. Join the Patreon to listen to it. And we talked about how like it was really clear at that point in time that WWF was having the better shows week to week. The ratings did not reflect it. And it was a slow turn until they built up that momentum. And I think, AEW, we've been critical at times. We praise them at times. And I think right now they're putting on very good TV for the most part. There's some things I take issue with still, but I mean, overall, it's not perfect, but they've been very good, I think, the last couple of pay-per-view cycles. And I think the writing's been better. The shows have been better, and they're getting there. And it's not going to turn around overnight, but I think long-term, the attendance is going to come back. I saw there's people on social media talking about how that Dynamite in Chicago right around the 4th of July wasn't selling tickets very much. I got an update tonight. It's almost sold out now from the setup that they have. They could open more tickets. And they don't have all of Wintrust open. It's a pretty low capacity, but they're pretty close to selling what they had opened up. It's like only a couple hundred tickets are left. I mean, they'll get there. Now you got Max back. Hopefully they get Kenny Omega back, eventually. And you got these two top guys who really feel like crossover stars. I think it's just a matter of time. I think they got to keep at it, but I'm pretty high on AEW right now. Justin, how are you feeling? And I mean, you were at Dynamite last week. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I was getting a little nervous there for a while about AEW and possibly my interest in wrestling overall. Cause as you guys know, I have a real hard time watching WWE, but they just are so good at kind of almost seemingly pulling matches out of their asses, that I desperately want to see. And especially when I think about this Forbidden Door card where 2 weeks ago, like kind of like how you mentioned with the way New Japan is right now, it's like, I'm real concerned about this show. And now all of a sudden, like within the last week, now we're staring down MJF versus Hechizero. Yes, please. Danielson versus Shingo. Are you fucking kidding me?
I know, right?
Let's fucking go. It's just now I'm amped. And I think the two women's title matches are some of the best builds they've done with, two women's matches on the same pay-per-view in a long time. I'm very interested in both of those. So I'm borderline giddy for this Forbidden Door show. And it's funny, I just talking about how they're pulling matches out of their asses that I want to see. I got all excited when they announced Claudio and Pac. And I'd kind of forgotten about they actually wrestled a year ago at Death Before Dishonor, and it was fine, I guess. I don't even know if I'd call it fine, and then I watched that match on Dynamite, and I once again kind of disappointed. I thought the finish was pretty good, but I guess sometimes, irregardless of how good you are, sometimes the chemistry just isn't there. But that opening match, MJF and Rush, more than made up for, Pac and Claudio underwhelming, because I loved that opener on Dynamite. And frankly, I loved it to the point, and I've been high on him for a long time, but I wish Rush was at a higher level in this company. And dare I say, I almost kind of wish he was in Okada's spot.
Yeah, it's very good. I can't disagree too much. I did get the screenshot. I got the screenshot from Tim. I want to put this on the screen. Thank you, Tim. Look at that airtime for Top Rope Nation on Dynamite last
You
week.
love to see it.
He had it right from the start. People in our Facebook group were like, we see the sign. That is the same sign we had at All Out, what was it, 22, when Moxley walked right past us, Jesse. And you have to watch closely, but it's in our opening here on YouTube. I've got Moxley walking out with that sign. Same sign that Tim printed off a couple of years ago. Good stuff, Tim. Appreciate you holding that sign up for us and getting the word out on Top Rope Nation. Jesse, anything to add on what we've been talking about before we go to the Owen tourney?
Roosh beat the hell out of MJF.
Oh, it's beautiful. It was beautiful.
Definitely fun to watch. And MJF is an extremely good seller. I mean, you got on top of it all. I mean, and this is, I think, Roosh's third or fourth match back since the Continental Classic, which I remember talking about at the time. He was the one I walked away from going, okay, can we get this guy to where he should be, upper mid? Like Justin said, yeah, holding that title would be a wonderful thing. I think the thing I caught was the women's Owen looks loaded to me on both sides of the fence, and I can see a clear winner out of it, but nonetheless, you're going to get some pretty intriguing matchups that also further storylines down the road, because we're looking at Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale probably in a rematch after Willow's championship was taken away, and then Chris beat her up afterwards. So, and then I think Justin stole the thunder with Bryan Danielson and Shingo Takagi. So yeah, I am a self-professed Shingo guy. Like, he's my favorite matches of Will Ospreay, bar none, are against Shingo Takagi. I could watch those matches all day. Just tremendous chemistry. So with him and Danielson, it's going to be floor 4 3/4 stars.
I'm going to put it on the screen now. All right. So here is the men's bracket. All right. So I don't really get the people that are like saying they're disappointed with this bracket. I just don't. I mean, I know there's bigger names that could be in it, and maybe it could have done like a 16-man tournament, made it longer. I get that. But like, we got the wild card spot. So I mentioned Ospreay. We don't know who that's going to be yet. But I mean, like, people like Okada, like, there's stuff going on title picture wise where it doesn't make sense for them to be in this. Go ahead, Justin.
I was just there's only one name on there. And obviously we don't know who the wild card is yet, but there's only one name on there that doesn't belong. And it's Rey Fenix, unfortunately. I mean, we just saw him lose a match to Ospreay, so I don't know why he's right back in here. I think there probably would have been, some better options. And I'm sure there's some people, especially if they're watching this and seeing the names on it, that may have thought I was going to say another name, which I wouldn't dare do that, because I don't want to be flunked by our historian leader. I know a little bit about wrestling history, so I wouldn't dare say it.
There were people, Justin, that have very large podcasts, much larger than this podcast. I don't want to make any bones about it. Like, for sure, way bigger than this podcast. That doesn't mean they know more about wrestling than us. I'm not going to be too humble on this, but they have way bigger podcasts than ours. And they were spewing hate about, why is Jeff Jarrett? Are you effing kidding me? Like, Owen Hart's last tag team partner, the guy he was riding up the road with at the end, the Canadian country. Have you forgotten about this? Like, Jeff Jarrett has to be in this. It makes total sense for him. How would he not be in the Owen Hart Memorial Tournament? For God's sakes, he has to be in there. So, I mean, we got Pac winning already. We got Danielson and Takagi coming up. We got Phoenix and Jay White, and then Jarrett and whoever this wild card is. And I do like how they're spreading this out. So, like, Jarrett and the wild card looks like it will happen after Forbidden Door. So that it could be Ospreay. If he gets screwed, he can be like, I'm getting in this tournament to get another opportunity, make all the sense in the world. So he still has a chance to headline Wembley when they get over there in the end of August. So I can't say, I'll throw it to Jesse, I can't say I'm disappointed too much in this bracket.
I would not want Will Ospreay as the wild card.
Ooh.
I feel that if you're not going to throw Okada in this tournament, he's the Continental Champion, Ospreay's the European, the International Champion, then I get that we have this title, not title versus title match, but champion versus champion. I don't want to see him in there. I would like to see Hangman Page be the wild card. I think he's due
That'd
back
be
here
cool. Yeah.
momentarily. So you can also, and if just like what I'm looking at headline wise, Danielson, Hangman, they have a lot of backstory between the two. So I think the stakes there wouldn't be any higher than getting a world title match at Wembley. And I gasped for about 3 seconds last night when I saw Jeff Jarrett's name appear, and then the thought came to me. I'm like, yep, it makes sense. So no, I'm not upset about that. I agree with Rey Fenix being replaced. It's just a matter of whom.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of names out there.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's for sure going to be Ospreay, but I'm saying like it could be.
Mhm.
And I think that makes it interesting that they have that wild card there. And Hangman would be sweet. I would like that.
I think it would be probably underwhelming, but if you're just kind of playing off, I don't think nostalgia is the right word here, but with, Jeff Jarrett having been Owen's partner, when at the time he died, well, Owen's very last match was a tag team match with Jeff Jarrett versus Edge and Christian. So Christian being the wild card versus Jeff Jarrett in the Owen Hart tournament, I think would be a nice touch too.
Is that the Allstate Arena? I'm trying to remember.
The last match? Owen's last match? That I'm not sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I want to say it was at the Allstate Arena. I can't remember for sure though. Yeah. I mean, it's we'll see. But I mean, do you guys have any thoughts on the winner?
I really actually like the idea of Hangman taking it, and you get Hangman Swerve for the world title at All In, but in also same show, Danielson Ospreay. I know everybody just kind of assumed we were building to Ospreay winning the title at All In, but I don't know. I mean, you don't have to do that. Like, I don't feel like that's going to sell all that many more tickets. I mean, just having those two, part 3 of Hangman Swerve and part 2 of Ospreay Danielson would, I think, make a lot of people happy who are attending that show.
You're talking the hottest feud they've had in the last year. So, I mean, I think people would really, really like Hangman Swerve. That would make a lot of sense. Get back to Ospreay and Bryan. Yeah, I think that's totally fine. I'd be on board with that. Absolutely.
That is also the only match, in my humble opinion, that would have a prayer of having a chance to not be completely upstaged by an Ospreay Danielson match. Would be Hangman and Swerve.
Dude, yeah.
Absolutely. Anything else is going to get engulfed.
Yeah.
I just want to reiterate something I said a couple weeks ago. If I was booking, or if just my preference would be Danielson winning this and him winning the title, having one short reign where he could maybe drop it back to Swerve at the Tacoma Dome for Wrestle Dream.
I looked it up, Justin. It was May 22nd, 99, Rosemont Horizon, now the Allstate Arena. Yep. Owen Hart and Jarrett defeated Edge and Christian when Owen pinned Christian, Owen's last match. Shout out history WWE, Graham Cawthon. Had him on the show a couple of years ago. If you guys never heard that, it was our Great American Bash history show. Go back and listen to it in the archives.
Fun episode.
Really good stuff. All right, so that is the men's bracket. Let's throw it to the women's bracket now. And this is what we're looking at over there. And Jesse, you said you think you got a clear winner. Who is it?
I have to go Mariah May here. Just in storyline purposes. I could see Statlander and Mariah May being the final, with Mariah being the one prevailing. But I mean, Deonna Purrazzo she came in, got the world title shot, and then has kind of been an afterthought since. I think she's only lost one other match since then. So she hasn't exactly been, she hasn't been jobbing. She's actually been not rehabbing her image either. The problem is, again, the women don't get enough segments, so we don't necessarily know about it. It's getting overshadowed by things. Yeah. Hikaru Shida's a 3-time champion. And then, so I truly believe it's Mariah May.
That would be my pick. Justin?
Yeah, I guess my only hesitation is that I just feel like obviously that would be leading to a split with her and Tony Storm. And to me, they're so good together that there's just a lot more meat on that bone to keep them together for, you know,
Mhm.
the rest of the year, possibly, and just keep building up that eventual split. So in that case, I'd probably go Soraya, even though yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know if Tony Storm and Soraya is really going to do it, but yeah, I don't have a great feel for it, honestly.
We'll know pretty soon because she'd be going over Mariah here in the first match, so could happen. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, it depends how they book this match at Forbidden Door too, with Mariah, and how the finish of that match goes. So very interesting, very very interesting.
Yeah. Saraya had her moment last year in Wembley too. So
True.
yeah, I think that's part of the reason I can't see it, but yeah. Mariah looks like the clear name to me just because I think a Tony Storm, Chris Statlander match, while I think it would be really good at All In, is just kind of a weird heel versus heel dynamic, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, I agree. They're pushing Stat really hard right now, and I do like the intro. I like what Stokely's doing. It's very good. But yeah, I think I still, at the end of the day, I would go with Mariah on this. And I feel like this would be something they've had their sights on for a while, if that is the case.
And it could maybe turn into MJF Adam Cole. I mean, not in like the presentation of it all, but it could turn into Tony Storm retaining, they hug it out, and they turn on each other later on in the year.
Yeah. Yeah, they had that same dynamic on the men's side. Great callback last year. So we'll see. So that's the Owen brackets. And the only other topic that we wanted to get to tonight was who killed WCW? I mean, it hasn't been that long, has it? Well, 23 years, but we didn't get a chance to talk about episode 2 because we did classics last week. So we can talk about episode 2, but I definitely want to talk about episode 3 that just aired 2 nights ago as we record this. Episode 2 mostly focused on Goldberg, the end of the streak, and Bret Hart and Bill Goldberg. And I have some thoughts, as you probably would guess. I thought, again, we talked about the first episode of Who Killed WCW. It's like we've heard a lot of this before. We're not new to the story. There's been very good books written on this. It's moderately amusing to get, commentary from today from some of these guys, and to see some of the backstage footage here and there. And Bret Hart is phenomenal on here. I mean, he's just telling it like it is. And let's start with Nash and Goldberg, because everybody has panned Nash ending the streak ever since it happened. And Nash, I mean, he still stands by the decision. Like, they go into why Nash was booking, and all of that, and him becoming a booker. But I mean, he made the statement that Jesse said earlier on the show that for a babyface, the money is in the chase. And he thought that Goldberg losing to him and then chasing him for the belt, or chasing somebody for the belt, as it would turn out. He said, I don't get why, he didn't really understand why anyone has a problem with that. Justin, what do you think about Kevin Nash's comments?
I mean, so many of these guys are so far up their own ass. It's impossible to take them seriously. And it's weird because like some of the stuff Kevin Nash says, I do agree with. Like, I think for the most part, yeah, the money is in the chase.
Well, except when Hogan had the title for like 4 years in the 80s.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right?
Exactly. But like, and he mentioned, like, look at the crowd when he won the title, they went nuts. And that's true. If you look at the crowd, they're going pretty crazy. But I think a big part of that is just because the crowd was excited to be there to see the streak end.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously we know what happens, the finger poke of doom, and it just the chase is just null and void at that point. So
yeah. I mean,
Go
look,
ahead.
I was just going to say, I was a 15-year-old, almost 15 at the time, and I made no bones about it. I don't like Goldberg now. I didn't like him then. I didn't get the appeal at all Always thought he stunk in the ring. I thought he was a cheap Steve Austin personally at the time. And I'm not going to lie, I would have been cheering if I was there that night too, because I didn't like Goldberg. But I would also acknowledge I would have been the vast minority of the audience at the time, and that Goldberg was massively over and was one of the few bright spots that they had as far as like newer guys coming along. So, I mean, it just kind of came off like Nash really hasn't learned anything since then, that was probably not. And then he defended the finger poke of doom too. Which, like, I mean, they brought it back. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit in episode 3, because in episode 3, he brought it up again. And he was talking about like all the terrible shit they did at the end when Russo was there. And yes, it was terrible. And he calls back to that. And he says, look at when they tried to dump the blood on me in the ring, the new blood stuff. And he's like, look at me there. And then contrast that with, the finger poke of doom. And Nash says, which was more detrimental to this company? And it's like, dude, the finger poke of doom happened at the Georgia Dome when the company was on fire. And the stupid bloodbath shit happened when the company was dying. There's no comparison. Like, the bloodbath thing didn't matter to the trajectory of the company. It just didn't. The finger poke did, because you had just beat Goldberg and then you turned around and did that. That's why it was such a problem, I think. I'll let you jump in, Jesse.
Butts in seats, Tony Schiavone declaring McFoley was winning the title. Yes, so by far the finger poke of doom is the more hideous. Actually, it's just the more universally watched moment, and it's way more hideous because, again, how many people were watching it, which is to one of my biggest points. I'm going to fast forward a little to episode 3. For all those fans who are 21 and younger, if you are just making these bizarre claims about how horrible certain things are on television these days, go watch episode 3 of Who Killed WCW and see some of the segments that rolled through. But 25 to 30 minutes of it. You got 9 months of that style of programming, and just think about how GD awful that stuff was. And you're telling me that anything today is even as deplorable as that. I think the only thing we can say about AEW is maybe, like, in terms of negativity, maybe 10 to 15 minute matches, like matches that overstay their welcome, are what we find to be slightly negative. And it's like, maybe the match should have ended earlier. We talked about this last week. Maybe there should be more 6-minute matches on TV. We talked about on Classics. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's one of my biggest takeaways. But in terms of Kevin Nash, the politician, no, it's such a bad look. Everybody's just trying to point fingers at the other person, when in reality they all had their hands in the cookie jar.
Yeah. I mean, that's the truth of the matter, is not one person killed this promotion. It was a lot of people. It was Hogan, it was Bischoff, it was Russo at the end, it was the business side that never liked WCW. Like, there's a lot of blame. You could blame some people more than others, certainly, but there is not a singular answer. Justin, did you want to jump in?
Yeah. So I had been thinking before I watched episode 3, we'd just covered Spring Stampede. What was that, 99? Mm-hmm. Everybody become a Patreon. Go listen to that episode. It's awesome. And where we talked about, this time frame with the finger poke of doom. And it just had me thinking about, like, how I was with as a fan there, and how I felt about WCW, and how much of that is tied to how seriously I take the World Championship, because that is such a big part of a wrestling promotion, is how do we feel about the championship? Because if we don't give a shit about the champion, why do we care about the promotion? And while I agree with, a lot of the things you guys are saying, the one thing I will say about the finger poke of doom is that I don't think it was an unsalvageable misstep on their part. Like, the company was not doomed at that point. I don't think I gave up on them at that point. And so I was looking at the lineage of the world title, and I realized when I gave up on it, when I was just like, this company fucking stinks and I don't care who their champion is anymore. And it started in October of 99, where we had 5 straight world champions who vacated the world title. And that's 5. There after the 5th, there was a 6th champion, and then he vacated it. And it just made me not care about the world championship anymore. And watching episode 3, well, who came into WCW in October of 99? Vince Russo.
Oh, yes.
And just watching that entire episode, it was like, oh yeah, I fucking hated that entire era of WCW. And at least when you talk about Eric Bischoff, he brought some things to the table. You know, he brought in Hogan and Savage and was so important, you know, bringing in all the luchadors and starting the NWO. And he definitely is a player when you talk about the demise of WCW. And Ryan, I think you summed it up fantastically, saying like, you have to put some of it on Bischoff. You have to put some of it on Hogan. You have to put some of it on the TV executives who wanted the company gone. And you got to put some on Russo. And to me, the biggest chunk of guilt goes to Russo and Hogan, because when things were still salvageable, Hogan would not do the right thing. And then an unleashed Russo, who did not have the handcuffs or the filter of a Vince McMahon, destroyed the company to me. Like, he made it completely unwatchable. So that was my big takeaway, is not only watching episode 3, it's like, oh, I hated this. I also thought he came off as utterly unlikable in that show, talking about, I'm making a TV show, bro. Dude, yeah, you're making a wrestling TV show. Imagine if some, 30-minute sitcom comedy director was, I'm just making TV. No, you have a very specific kind of television show that you need to put out in front of your fans. And you failed spectacularly at it, Vince.
He has learned nothing at all. It was mind-boggling watching him defend all of this shit, which clearly was bad.
Yep.
And he that part where he talked about putting the title on David Arquette? This is in episode 3. And then he's like, bro, everybody in that room supported it. And then they go to everyone else and they're like, we thought that was a dumb idea. Now, Tony Schiavone did come up with the idea, and that is true. Tony has talked about it on his podcast. It is true that Tony Schiavone pitched that. They should have said no.
Yep.
And he tries to defend it, and he's like, look, we were in USA Today after this happened because this actor had our world title, but he doesn't understand that there's a difference between good press and bad press. And that's bad press, because anyone reading that is not going to think, oh, I got to watch this. They're going to think that company is a joke. The other company, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, I've heard about what they're doing. David Arquette, that scrawny little guy. And this is not on David Arquette, because he didn't want to win the world title. He's their world champ. Like, what a joke of a wrestling company. And I went back and I looked at the ratings, and so that happened on a Thunder where he won the world title. The following Monday, that episode of Monday Nitro was the second biggest proportional gap in the history of the Monday Night Wars. So Monday Night Raw pretty much tripled the rating of Nitro the next Monday. And the only time there was a bigger spread was a few weeks before that, the night after WrestleMania 2000, for the night after Mania. Other than that, the Nitro after Thunder had the biggest spread proportionally of the entire Monday Night War ratings feud. And this guy still thinks it was a good idea. He has learned nothing. That is indefensible. And for him to say, oh yeah, man, we got all this attention. Dude, no, you didn't. Like, your ratings tanked. The company was going nowhere. That is not the kind of not the kind of attention. That's not causing anyone to buy tickets. And that's what this business is about. And it's just kind of mind-boggling to me that, I mean, he has a big audience still. This guy does a podcast and lots of people watch it. They must find him engaging as a personality, because as far as knowing wrestling goes, that tells you all you need to know. He still thinks that that was a good idea. This is a guy who came into WCW and made himself the focal point of the shows. He put the title on himself. He had himself in the ring giving promos and wrestling. Dude, you were hired to be a writer. I remember when he got hired, and I knew his name from writing for the magazine, like when wasn't he Vic Venom first or something like that? And then he was Vince Russo, and then he was on Livewire. Like, I knew who he was. But like, during the height of the Attitude Era, when he was there, he was not a character. He was behind the scenes for the most part. So like, he didn't come over with people like, oh, I want to see Vince Russo on TV. Yeah, people were excited when he got hired because we didn't know what was going to happen. And we knew he was one of the writers for the company that was way freaking better at that moment in time. But what Justin said is right. Vince McMahon, detestable human being, but Vince McMahon harnessed the guy, and he took some of his ideas and some of the other ideas he didn't. But one of the fundamental differences between him writing WWF and him writing WCW is that when he got to WCW, they had already buried Goldberg. They had already crushed any momentum they had of people moving up the card. When he was with the WWF, they had these ascendant generational stars that he did not make. Like, he was there. He didn't write the Austin 316 promo. You know, Rock people had more creative freedom over their promos back then. Rock was making himself what he became. Like, yeah, he had some of this car crash TV stuff going on, and people all know about it from the Attitude Era, but we've talked about it on the show. None of that shit ages well. It's terrible television. Like, even some of the best Raw's Wars from the Attitude Era, I'd rather watch Dynamite, to be honest with you, than any of those. Even though the company was like on fire, I'd rather watch a 2024 Dynamite than most Raws from 98 or 99, frankly, because it hasn't aged well, because it just wasn't good TV. It was crash TV while they had massive stars. And the people were tuning in because of the massive stars, not because of the crash TV and Mae Young and all that. You know, I don't even remember if that was when Russo was there, whatever, you know, like the crazy shit that was happening on TV. That's not really why people were tuning in. They were tuning in because of Steve Austin and The Rock and The Undertaker, and like Hunter was on the rise, like that stuff. That's why they were tuning in. And I'll give them like a little credit for scripting some of their stuff, but they become those same guys without Vince Russo. So he goes to WCW, and his job was to make the show more watchable and to create stars like that. And he did not know how to create stars like that. All he knew how to do was car crash TV, and it didn't work. And it was low rent, and nothing made sense. And then he made himself the focal point of TV, and he went out there and he aired his grievances, him and Ed Ferrara, making fun of Jim Ross, you know, making fun of people that he didn't like from the WWF. And you can totally understand why some of these guys, even today, are like, geez, we wondered if he was there to sabotage WCW, because it was so freaking bad, dude. What are you? And he's still defending it to this day. Mind blowing. Just mind blowing. Jesse.
Two things on that with Russo. It makes you wonder if he was behind the Huckster Nacho Man stuff from 96, early 97. That's number one. And then to piggyback off what you just been talking about, making himself an honor talent world champion, the most hideous comment last night on that show was he said that he was 80% more, or 80% of the roster he was more over than.
He says a better worker or something like that. Like
something along those lines.
Better worker than 80% of the locker room. This guy who had never been a television character before. That tells you all you need to know about the ego of this guy. And that's why he drove the company into the ground. Lots of people, you know, had started to put that coffin underground. But I mean, this guy drove in the final nails. He really did. And I agree with Justin. I tuned in when they brought him in. I remember watching that with some excitement, thinking maybe they could turn it around. And then even when Bischoff came back, but like within a couple weeks, I was tuned out. This is terrible. Some of the worst wrestling to ever air on TV ever, any year. Horrid. Absolutely horrid. And okay, this Bill Goldberg. We got to get to this. This Bill Goldberg. came off as one of the most unlikable people I have ever seen. And we know this guy said some problematic things in recent months, which has made me feel justified in never liking the guy ever. Again, I'll say it again. I never found him captivating. I see why some people did. I didn't. The stuff with Brett and the injury, he does not get it. And I know people think Brett whines about this. He's talking about it because he's asked about it. This is not a guy who just goes around talking about this kind of stuff. I've said this on the show. I've had conversations with Bret Hart. He doesn't bring up Montreal out of nowhere. He doesn't bring up Goldberg out of nowhere. He's talking about it because he asked about it for an interview. And for Bill Goldberg to sit there and shrug his shoulders and say, well, you knew the kick was coming on the career-ending injury he gave Bret Hart, this mule kick. We didn't even look at the guy as he's coming off the ropes. This back kick at Starrcade 99 is unfathomable to me. Let me ask you guys a question. So you pull up to an intersection, a lighted intersection, right? And you get the green light. And so you're going, and a car comes and T-bones you. And if that guy gets out of the car and he says, well, you knew I could run the red light. Whose fault is it? I mean, you knew the kick was coming? Yeah, but your job is to pull the kick and not kick the guy's effing head off, dude. You knew the kick was coming? That's your defense? It's like, no, your job in that other scenario is you have to stop at the red light. And in Goldberg's case, you need to not connect with the kick. And you don't kick full blast without even looking at the guy. Just reprehensible.
Well, and not to slow your momentum here, Ryan, because you're on a hell of a roll here. It wasn't just the kick. He dropped Brett on his head on the ring at the ring post when Brett was doing the figure four. You know, yeah. It was like, I think it was the kick and one other thing. It was just this cascade of errors from Goldberg that basically ended Brett's career. Not basically, ended Brett's career.
I got one other thing I got to say on this. It just popped into my mind. I'm going to keep going here. I saw some people on social media defending Goldberg. And like, come on, Brett, you went on to work a hardcore match with Terry Funk after this happened and you're blaming Goldberg? He had a freaking head injury. Read his book. He couldn't even remember what was happening, like what he did the day before, or where he was, because he had a series of concussions. It started there, and then WCW's medical staff they kept pushing him out there to work. They didn't realize what was happening. To say that, oh, but Brett, you continued to work because he had a head injury. He didn't know what he was doing until finally the constant headaches and flashes that he was having. They finally realized what was going on. And they said, you have suffered a series of concussions in just a couple of weeks. Jesus, man. I don't know, man. All right. Somebody else.
Yeah, when he had his match with Scott Hall before the Hogan, or it was same card, Georgia Dome, and they pointed out those handful of things that went wrong, and Goldberg's like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. He admitted it to Scott Hall.
Yes. Yeah.
There you go. Right there. Just
no
shows
shit.
You how green, and I did call him Greenberg back then for a long time, so it was justified. Ryan's gone over plenty.
Yeah, he worked Terry Funk in a hardcore match on Thunder on January 4th, 2000. So that was, when was Starrcade? I don't even remember it. It was December 19th. Yeah, it's like 2 weeks later. Yeah, read the book. It's this book right here. It's behind me on the shelf. The Bret Hart biography talks all about it. Educate yourselves, people. It's not a defense of Goldberg to say that Bret Hart kept wrestling. He had a head injury. Jesus. But yeah, the Goldberg thing where he's like, well, you knew the kick was coming is just mind-boggling. I mean, if you're in the wrestling business, I don't know how you have any respect for that.
We were at least 7 to 10 years away to having any idea of what concussions actually do to people.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. So scary stuff. He also apparently has not learned anything. So that's pretty much episodes 2 and 3. Did I leave out anything? I know I wanted to get the Goldberg rant in, so
I shit on Russo, so I'm feeling good.
you did a good job, bro. Good job. Man, it's like almost unlistenable, that guy. I don't know, man. I don't know. Look, I'll give him credit, I guess. He's got an audience. He's been able to monetize his podcast. Those people think that was good television, apparently.
A lot of marks out there, Ryan. A lot of marks.
Who wouldn't want to see Vince Russo in a world championship match?
They're attracted to weirdos with podcasts from New York.
I guess
cough, JD. Cough, cough.
Yeah, not good. Not effing good, guys. Not effing good. All right. Well, I think this has been a pretty good episode. I feel pretty good about this podcast. I was really looking forward to this. I told you guys we got a lot to talk about. I think we hit on everything. Hour and 20 minutes, a little bit longer than we usually go, but I hope you all were thoroughly entertained and that you don't walk away from this one hopefully you don't walk away from this one with any head injuries. Hopefully a couple smiles. And that'll be good. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun. I think we're probably going to be recording that Vengeance Classics maybe next week. We'll talk about it off air because we're getting close to the end of the month. And then we got pay-per-views coming up. So we'll get that scheduled. You guys can sign up for the Patreon to hear all of those bonus shows or just to support what we are doing. We would really appreciate your support. I did announce something in our Facebook group. It's on the social media too. And I guess I can briefly talk about it. I want to make a more elaborate video for our YouTube that will unveil it eventually because I'm talking to a few people about doing some shows. We're not going to announce anything official yet. The big announcement is we are likely starting the Top Rope Nation Network, which will be us basically producing some other shows from some other talent on our YouTube channel and on the Patreon side. So what we envision is this show will always stay the same. We have always called it the flagship, but we've got such a great group of listeners and friends in the podcasting industry that we thought we could do something more and also expand the reach of our YouTube channel and get some more people on there. Because look, I know from growing this podcast for many years, it's really hard to get monetized on YouTube. You got to get 1,000 subscribers. You got to have 4,000 watch hours. And I know there's people who are talented that it would take them years to get there. So we thought, we could offer our platform to them and we could start a network. So what it was going to look like is that on our YouTube channel, our show will continue to live there, but we will have other playlists of new shows that will air under the Top Rope Nation Network banner with totally different hosts. None of us, new people coming on board. And we might have them as guests here and there on the flagship, but they're going to essentially be doing their own thing with freedom over their own shows. I'm not going to micromanage what they're doing. They'll be allowed to do whatever they want, but those shows will be free, totally free on our YouTube channel, Top Rope Nation Network. On top of that, I will put their shows up audio-wise as podcasts on our Patreon. So if you want the ease of listening to all of the network shows, you would sign up for the Patreon page and have access to those. So all those details will come in the future. Basically, it's out of convenience. If you want to support what we're doing, you can get all of them on the Patreon RSS feed eventually. I don't know when exactly this is going to launch. My vision is to have kind of a full network of shows where nearly every day something's going up. That's the goal. And I'm talking to a handful of people right now, but I'm not going to announce a start date until we have a pretty loaded lineup. That's the idea. So it could be a month from now. It could be 2 months from now. My goal is to get it launched this summer. So it will just be more content from our channel. And, we just want to put out more content for our viewers and our listeners. So on YouTube, it'll be totally free. Just subscribe to the channel. But if you want to hear it on the earbuds, while you're at work or whatever, you join the Patreon page and then you'll get it all just synced up on the Patreon app or whatever podcast app you use with our RSS feed. So that's kind of what we're envisioning. I've been talking with Jesse and Justin about this for a couple of months now, I think. We've been talking about doing this for a while and finally just put out the announcement on social media and in the Facebook group. It's on our Patreon page too. And that's a public post. So if you want to read more about the details, you can get it all there. But just just something to look forward to in the future. I think it's pretty exciting, us just giving you more content and just creating a network of good shows from good people with good wrestling talk, and not people who think putting the world title on the head writer of a wrestling show is a good idea. So we'll be a little bit smarter than that.
I thought we were looking for pro Goldberg, pro Russo, pro spooky wrestling podcasters. That's what we're looking to bring in.
Yeah. So the first show we're going to announce is Who's Next? No, no, not a chance. But no, I mean, I've talked to a handful of people right now, and I think they would all do really good stuff for us. And once we can work out a schedule, I will unveil more. But I would say in the interim, subscribe to the YouTube channel. When I'm ready to unveil like the whole schedule. And again, the idea is a static schedule with shows certain days of the week, just so you have more to tune into. So we would keep our flagship probably Thursday nights, but then there would be a show going up on Wednesday and a show going up on Tuesday and so on. So yeah, there's some good ideas spinning. I'll say that. Some people you've heard from on the pod before, maybe as guests here and there, some other people that maybe you haven't. So just something to look forward to, more content from the Top Rope Nation family. More in the future. That's all I got, guys. Anything else for the good of the cause?
Exciting times here at Top Rope Nation.
It is. And Jesse, you're coming up on your 1-year anniversary.
Yes. Yes, I am.
I don't know the exact date off the top of my head. I want to say it was July.
First week of July.
Okay, real close.
We're inches away.
Shit,
yes.
that year flew by, buddy.
Yeah.
I know, which reminds me, what would that be? The week of July 8th. Yeah, after the 4th will be when we record 150.
Yeah.
We're like 3 weeks away from that, 2.5.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, the timing hasn't worked out to where, I mean, Andreas Hale right now is in Aruba, so I wouldn't be able, they're not going to be able
for Unplugged? Yeah. TRN Unplugged?
Yep,
yeah.
for 150. So I'm going to probably record 149 next week, and then us with 150, and then get back on a weekly rotation starting July 8th.
And that is one of our existing Patreon shows, Top Rope Nation Unplugged, Jesse's show. So we're going to do kind of a history of the pod and how all of us came together and all of that. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that. So yes, that tier on Patreon, by the way, I will say this. It's the $5 tier, gets you access to kind of like the core Top Rope Nation shows. The flagship, which is ad-free on Patreon. If you listen to our main feed, there's ads. If you join Patreon, you get it with no ads every week. But then you also get Top Rope Nation Classics, Top Rope Nation Unplugged, Top Rope Nation Extra. That's going to always be like our core Patreon shows from us, the main hosts. The network shows that we're going to supplement with on this new project, that will be part of a different tier. That will probably be, I think the working plan is probably the $10 tier, because I mean, you're going to be getting like 3 times as many shows. So that's the goal. And also, like, these new people coming on, I'd like to, I don't make people work for free. I would like to be able to pay them a little bit. So, I mean, that's the goal, is that, everyone gets monetized a little bit. And, for $5 more a month, you would get tons more show. You get the whole network, everything that we do, plus all their shows in your AirPods every week.
Trickle down economics is what Ryan's looking at.
Yes. Something like that. A style of trickle down that actually works. Yes. Yes. So yes, exciting times. More on that in the future. It's the early stages right now, but if you follow us on social media, you saw some talk about it. So I was going to bring it up here. All right.
I got one last thing, and this is for the Iron Sheik's kids. They need to hurry up and trademark Haktua immediately.
Oh no. You just made this podcast rated X. I definitely got to click that explicit box now when I upload this pod.
As my camera blurs. Great.
Oh, I think you hocked to it on your camera, man. All right, guys. With that said, this has been episode 346 of the flagship. We'll talk to you all again real soon. Have a good weekend.
Banner 19, let's go.